Supreme Commander Vexthal's talons clicked rhythmically against the polished obsidian of his command throne. Through the vast observation window of the World Breaker, he watched the approaching human vessels with barely concealed disdain. Their ships looked like toys compared to his 15-kilometer flagship, their hulls gleaming silver against the backdrop of stars. Magnification. Triple quadrant. He commanded, his secondary breathing bladders inflating with irritation. The holographic display zoomed in on the lead vessel, U.S. Defiant. Its sleek design spoke of aerodynamic principles that seemed absurd for space combat. At barely a kilometer in length, it was smaller than even the World Breaker's primary weapon housing. Captain Emily Anderson stood on the Defiant's bridge, her posture relaxed but alert. The massive Kazarn vessel dominated their view, its hull decorated with the scars of 100 victories. "Tactical analysis," she requested, her voice calm despite the gravity of humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization. Their primary vessel masses approximately 50 times our entire diplomatic fleet combined, Lieutenant Harrison reported from his station. Energy readings are significant, Captain. Their power output exceeds our theoretical maximum by several orders of magnitude. Anderson nodded, her expression unchanged. And their weapon systems. Standard energy projection arrays, but scaled up to astronomical sizes. They seem to favor overwhelming force over precision. Harrison paused, checking his readings again. Their targeting systems appear relatively basic, though, built for engaging large targets at extreme range. The communication system crackled to life. A harsh, multi-tone voice filled the bridge. "Human vessel Defiant, you will proceed to docking Bay 47. Any deviation from your assigned course will be considered an act of aggression." "Acknowledged, World Breaker," Anderson replied smoothly. "We're honored by your hospitality." She gestured to her helmsman, who began the careful approach to the designated bay, a cavity in the Kazarn vessel that could have housed their entire fleet. Inside the World Breaker's receiving chamber, Vexthal's massive form towered over the human diplomatic party. His iridescent scales shifted colors under the harsh lighting, a biological display of his species' emotional state. Currently, they rippled with shades of amber and violet, amusement and contempt. "I must admit," he rumbled, addressing his subordinates more than his guests, "when we detected your civilization's electromagnetic emissions, we expected more." He paused, letting his inner eyelids slide closed in what passed for a Kazarn smile. "More everything, really." Anderson maintained her diplomatic composure, though she noticed her military attaché, Commander James Roberts, tensing slightly. The chamber itself was clearly designed to intimidate, with ceiling heights that would accommodate a small office building and atmospheric processors that created a constant, low-frequency hum just at the edge of human hearing. "Your ships," Vexthal continued, gesturing with one massive arm toward the viewport where the Defiant was visible. "They're so small, almost cute, like the training vessels we give to our young." Several of his officers chittered in appreciation of the joke. "Tell me, Captain Anderson, do they even have weapons? Or do you rely entirely on hiding?" "Every tool has its purpose, Supreme Commander," Anderson replied, her slight smile never wavering. "We find our vessels serve ours quite adequately." Vexthal's scales shifted to a deeper purple. "Indeed, and what purpose would that be? Surely not warfare. Not real warfare, at any rate. Your entire ship would fit within one of our secondary cargo bays." "Size isn't everything, Supreme Commander," Anderson said, her voice carrying clearly despite its measured tone. "Humanity has learned many lessons about assumptions over our history." "Lessons?" Vexthal's secondary breathing bladders expanded fully, a sign of mounting irritation. "What lessons could your species possibly teach the Kazarn Dominion? We have conquered 12 sectors. Our smallest destroyer could obliterate your entire fleet." Anderson's smile remained unchanged, but something in her eyes caused one of Vexthal's junior officers to step back involuntarily. "That's an interesting theory, Supreme Commander. Let's hope we never have to test it." The tension in the chamber ratcheted up several notches. Vexthal's scales rippled with bands of crimson, a warning display. "Was that a threat, Captain?" "Not at all," Anderson replied smoothly. "Merely an observation about the nature of untested theories. Now, shall we discuss the matter of establishing diplomatic relations between our peoples?" The negotiations lasted exactly 6 hours before they collapsed completely. Lieutenant Commander Jack Morrison watched from the bridge of the U.S. Hornet as the massive K'arn vessels began their ominous advance toward New Helena, humanity's furthest colonial world. They're demanding unconditional surrender of all human territories. Captain Anderson's voice crackled through the fleet-wide comm. "They've given us 1 standard hour to comply." Morrison's fingers drummed against his command chair. The Hornet, like all ships in the Perseus class, was built for speed and maneuverability. At just under a kilometer in length, it carried a crew of 50, mostly operating the advanced targeting systems and power distribution networks. "All ships, combat formation Delta," Anderson commanded. "Remember your training. They may be bigger, but we've prepared for this." Morrison watched his tactical display as the human fleet spread out in a 3-dimensional pattern that would have looked chaotic to untrained eyes. Each ship maintained precise distances from its neighbors, creating overlapping fields of fire while minimizing their profile as targets. The K'arn attack began with typical brute force. Their massive dreadnoughts launched energy beams that could have cut through small moons. The space around New Helena lit up like a newborn star. "Evasive pattern Sigma 3, Morrison ordered. The Hornet's inertial dampeners strained as the ship pulled a maneuver that would have been impossible for vessels twice its size. The massive energy beam passed through empty space where they had been moments before. "These bastards don't know what they're dealing with," Lieutenant Sarah Reynolds muttered from her tactical station. "Their targeting systems are calibrated for capital ships, not corvettes." Morrison allowed himself a tight smile. "Then let's show them why size isn't everything. All weapons, prepare for synchronized strike on designated weak points. Execute pattern Striking Snake." The Hornet and its sister ships began a complex dance through space. Where the K'arn expected them to retreat from the overwhelming firepower, the human vessels instead charged forward, weaving between the massive energy beams with precision that seemed to defy physics. "Their shield geometry is optimized for frontal assault," Commander Rodriguez reported from the U.S. Raptor. "They never expected anyone to get this close." The human ships demonstrated why they were built small and agile. The K'arn's massive weapons couldn't track targets moving so quickly at close range. Their point defense systems, designed to handle missiles and fighters, struggled against ships that combined the agility of fighters with the durability and firepower of larger vessels. "We've got a hit," Reynolds announced as the Hornet's particle lance struck a vulnerable point in the nearest K'arn vessel's shield matrix. Shield efficiency down 12% in that sector. Morrison leaned forward. "All ships in Battle Group 7, concentrate fire on those coordinates. Let's show them what coordinated tactics can do." The battle transformed into a deadly game of precision versus power. The K'arn ships, for all their overwhelming force, couldn't effectively engage the human vessels that slipped through their defense screens like water through fingers. Each human ship carried weaponry that would have been impressive on a vessel 5 times its size, made possible by their advanced miniaturization technology. "They're pulling back," Anderson announced after 30 minutes of intense combat. "Looks like they didn't expect actual resistance." The crew of the Hornet cheered, but Morrison kept his eyes on the tactical display. "They'll be back," he said quietly, "and next time they won't underestimate us." In his command chamber aboard the World Breaker, Supreme Commander Vexthal raged at his tactical officers. How did they do this? Their ships are tiny. They should have been crushed instantly. His chief tactical officer, scales flickering with embarrassment, brought up a holographic replay of the battle. "Sir, their ships possess maneuverability we've never encountered before. Our targeting systems simply aren't designed to track vessels that can change vector so quickly. And their coordination. He paused, mandibles clicking nervously. It's unlike anything in our tactical database. Vexthal's scales darkened to deep crimson. Then we will adapt. Prepare the fleet for a full deployment. We will show these humans what real warfare looks like, even if we have to destroy every one of their worthless colonies to do it. But in the back of his mind, a new sensation had taken root: doubt. Admiral Rachel Cooper stood before the holographic display in the Strategic Command Center on Mars, watching as the latest battle data streamed in from the front lines. The massive K'Tarn vessels appeared as red pyramids, while human ships were represented by blue arrows, darting between them like schools of fish around whales. "Send Battle Group Echo through the Ceres debris field," she ordered, her voice carrying the weight of 20 years of space combat experience. "Commander Torres, your U.S. WASP will lead the charge." The debris field was a graveyard of ancient asteroids and mining equipment, too dense for the massive K'Tarn ships to navigate safely. Their 15-kilometer dreadnoughts would need to go around, adding precious hours to their journey. But for the human ships, it was perfect cover. "Admiral," Torres responded, his voice crackling through the quantum comm, "we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the K'Tarn fleet. They might be adapting their weapons." Cooper smiled grimly. "They can adapt all they want. They still can't change the laws of physics. Execute Operation Shadow Dance." The U.S. WASP led its battle group into the debris field, their advanced sensors mapping safe passages through the chaos. Each human vessel was equipped with newly developed gravimetric deflectors, allowing them to nudge smaller debris out of their path without revealing their position. Multiple K'Tarn signatures approaching from Vector 317. Lieutenant Jessica Chen reported from her tactical station aboard the WASP. "They're trying to box us in." Torres watched as the massive enemy ships formed a hemisphere around the debris field. "They think we're trapped." He opened the tactical channel. "All ships, initiate scatter pattern Delta. Show them why humans don't fear tight spaces." The battle group split into 3 ship units, each taking different paths through the field. Their small size allowed them to use the larger asteroids as cover, while their advanced sensors gave them a perfect view of the lumbering K'Tarn vessels. "Sir," Chen called out, "I'm detecting weak points in their formation. Their ships can't maintain tight spacing without risking collision." Torres nodded. "That's our opening. All ships, prepare for synchronized strike. Target their exposed flanks between ships. They're so worried about protecting their front, they've left their sides vulnerable." The human vessels struck from multiple vectors simultaneously. Particle lances and quantum torpedoes slipped through gaps in the K'Tarn formation that their larger ships couldn't possibly defend. Each hit was precisely calculated to exploit structural weaknesses that only became apparent when ships of such massive size tried to maneuver in concert. "Their entire command structure is based on overwhelming force," Cooper observed from Mars Command. "They've never had to fight an enemy that could exploit their blind spots like this." The K'Tarn responded with sweeping energy beams, trying to clear entire sectors of space at once. But the human ships simply weren't where they were supposed to be. They moved like fighters while hitting like cruisers, their advanced power systems allowing them to maintain shields and weapons that would have been impossible on such small vessels just a decade ago. "We've got confirmed hits on 3 of their support ships," Chen reported. "Their formation is starting to break up." Torres watched as the massive K'Tarn vessels began to retreat, their coordinated defense falling apart in the face of attacks they couldn't effectively counter. "This is why we built our ships this way," he transmitted to his battle group. "Not to match their strength, but to create our own advantages." Back in her command center, Cooper received the after-action reports with satisfaction. "Send word to all fleet commanders," she ordered. "The K'Tarn aren't invincible. Their size is their weakness, and we're going to exploit it at every opportunity." As the battle data continued to stream in, one thing became clear: the art of space combat was being rewritten. The K'Tarn's doctrine of overwhelming force was being systematically dismantled by human ships that turned their greatest strength into a critical weakness. "Let them build bigger ships," Cooper murmured, watching as another K'Tarn vessel retreated from the debris field, its hull scarred by precision strikes. "We'll just find more ways to make them regret it." Colonel Amanda Hayes stood at the command podium of the U.S. Barracuda, her eyes fixed on the tactical display where 30 human warships moved in perfect synchronization. Operation Wolfpack was about to demonstrate why humanity's small ships had become the terror of the K'Tarn fleet. "All vessels, final systems check," she broadcast across the quantum-linked network. "Remember, we hit as one or not at all." The target loomed ahead, the K'Tarn flagship, Star Crusher, a behemoth that had claimed 17 human colonies. Its hull stretched 12 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapon emplacements that could vaporize small moons. "Quantum sync confirmed," Lieutenant Marcus Peterson reported from his station. "All ships are linked within 0.3 microseconds. Battle computer is compensating for relativity effects." Hayes nodded, her expression intense. "Initiate attack pattern, striking servant. Groups 1 through 5, begin your approach vectors." The human ships moved like a school of predatory fish, breaking into smaller units that approached the massive K'Tarn vessel from different angles. Their drives were running in stealth mode, using the new quantum shroud technology that made them nearly invisible to K'Tarn sensors. "They're detecting something," Commander Eric Foster reported from the U.S. MECO. "But their sensors can't lock onto our signature pattern. The shroud is working." The Star Crusher's defensive systems began firing randomly into space, trying to hit targets they couldn't properly track. The massive energy beams looked impressive, but passed harmlessly through empty space as the human ships continued their approach. "All ships, prepare for synchronized strike," Hayes commanded. "Target data is being distributed now. Remember your training. Hit your assigned points exactly as planned." Each human vessel carried a specially designed quantum lance, a weapon that could penetrate K'Tarn shields when multiple beams struck the same point simultaneously. Alone, they were merely annoying. Together, they became devastating. "Strike points confirmed," Peterson announced. "All ships report ready. Quantum sync holding steady." Hayes took a deep breath. "Begin final approach. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Execute." 30 beams of concentrated energy struck the Star Crusher at precisely the same moment, hitting 6 different points with perfect synchronization. The K'Tarn shields, designed to resist single massive impacts, couldn't cope with the perfectly coordinated assault. "Direct hits confirmed." Foster's voice crackled with excitement. "Shield penetration at all target points. Their power grid is fluctuating." Inside the Star Crusher, alarms blared as systems began to fail. The massive vessel's commander watched in horror as damage reports flooded in from all sectors. Their mighty shields, thought impenetrable, had been bypassed by weapons that should have been too weak to matter. "Second wave, prepare to engage," Hayes ordered. "Target their secondary power nodes. Let's show them what coordinated warfare really means." The human ships regrouped with practiced precision, maintaining their quantum sync even under heavy fire. The Star Crusher's defensive batteries tried desperately to track them, but the vessel's small size and incredible speed made them nearly impossible to hit. "Look at their formation," Peterson observed. "They're trying to rotate their strongest shields toward us, but they can't turn fast enough." Hayes allowed herself a grim smile. "They still think like battleship commanders. They haven't realized that the age of the dreadnought is over. All ships, execute second strike pattern." Another perfectly synchronized barrage struck the Star Crusher, this time targeting its weapon systems. The massive ship's defenses began to crumble under the precise assault. "We've got core containment warnings," Foster reported. "Their main reactor is destabilizing. They're trying to vent plasma to compensate." Hayes opened a channel to all ships. "Final strike pattern. Execute immediately. Let's finish this." The death of the Star Crusher wasn't the spectacular explosion many expected. Instead, it died from 1,000 precise cuts, its mighty systems taken apart piece by weapons that its commanders had dismissed as insignificant. As the massive vessel finally went dark, Hayes transmitted one final message to her fleet. Remember this day. This is how we win. Not with size, but with precision. Not with power, but with coordination. The galaxy is about to learn that humanity's greatest strength isn't in our ships, but in how we use them. Commander Diana Parker guided the U.S. Phantom through the debris field surrounding the Kazarn's primary supply depot at Nexus 7. Her ship's quantum stealth systems were operating at maximum efficiency, making the vessel nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Behind her, 5 other ships of Strike Team Wraith followed in perfect formation, their presence masked by the background radiation of the system's dying star. "Status report," she whispered, though she knew the Kazarn couldn't possibly hear her. "Supply convoy approaching from Vector 217. Lieutenant Ryan Cooper responded, his voice equally hushed. 6 heavy freighters, 2 escort destroyers. They're running with minimal shields to conserve power for their cargo systems." Parker allowed herself a small smile. "Perfect. Just as intelligence predicted. All ships, prepare for synchronized strike. Remember, we're not here to destroy them. Just make sure those supplies never reach the front lines." The human vessels had been specially modified for this mission. Their already small profiles had been further reduced by stripping away all non-essential systems. Each ship carried an experimental quantum disruption device, designed to disable rather than destroy. "Ma'am," Cooper called out, picking up unusual readings from the 3rd freighter. "Energy signature doesn't match typical cargo vessels." "Show me," Parker ordered, studying the data on her command display. Well, looks like we found their mobile repair facility. Even better than we hoped. Team 2, adjust target priority." Aboard the World Breaker, Supreme Commander Vexthal faced open rebellion from his senior staff. His massive command chamber, once a symbol of Kazarn power, now felt like a cage. "The humans are making us look like fools," Sub-Commander Kexnar thundered, his scales flashing dangerous patterns of red and black. "Every day brings news of another supply line cut, another communication hub disabled. Our mighty ships have become nothing but targets." "Watch your tone," Vexthal growled, though his own scales betrayed his uncertainty with flickers of pale green. "We still possess overwhelming firepower advantage. The humans cannot hope to." "Cannot hope to what?" Kexnar interrupted. "They've already adapted to every strategy we've employed. Our ships are being picked apart by vessels we can barely detect, let alone fight." Back at Nexus 7, Parker's strike team sprung their trap. The quantum disruption devices activated simultaneously, sending waves of targeted energy through the convoy shields. Systems began failing across all 8 Kazarn vessels as carefully calibrated disruption fields interfered with their power distribution networks. "Direct hits confirmed," Cooper reported. "Their systems are going dark across the board. Engineering reports the disruptors performed better than expected. These ships won't be moving for at least 72 hours. Parker nodded with satisfaction. "Plant the quantum beacons. I want our main fleet to have no trouble finding this little present we're leaving them. Then prepare for Phase 2. Lieutenant James Martinez, leading the engineering analysis team aboard the U.S. Phantom, made a discovery that would change the course of the war. As they studied the disabled Kazarn vessels, a pattern emerged in their power systems. "Commander," he called out, excitement clear in his voice. "You need to see this. Their entire fleet operates on the same power distribution principles. They've never needed to change it because no one's ever gotten close enough to analyze it before. But now..." Parker leaned over his station, her eyes widening as she understood the implications. "Their massive power cores. They're all vulnerable to the same type of attack. Send this to Fleet Command immediately. Priority 1 encryption." As the strike team disappeared back into the void, leaving the helpless Xarn convoy floating in space. The balance of power shifted once again. The mighty Xarn war machine, built on the assumption that bigger always meant better, was being dismantled not by superior firepower, but by the one thing they'd never considered: human ingenuity. "Let them build their massive ships," Parker transmitted to her team as they headed home. "We'll just keep finding new ways to turn their strength into weakness." Director Thomas Wright stood in the central observation dome of the Mars shipyards, watching as automated construction systems assembled another squadron of Viper-class corvettes. Below him, quantum fabricators hummed with precision as they created hull sections that were simultaneously lighter and stronger than anything the Xarn had encountered. "Time to completion on Squadron 7, he asked, not taking his eyes off the magnificent display of human engineering efficiency. 4 days, 17 hours, his assistant, Dr. Emma Sullivan, reported. "We've managed to reduce production time by another 8% by implementing the new neural-guided assembly protocols." Wright nodded with satisfaction. In the time it took the Xarn to build a single dreadnought, the Mars shipyards could produce an entire battle group of advanced corvettes. The massive fabrication facilities stretched across Valles Marineris, using the natural canyon system as a protected construction dock. "Report from the front lines," Sullivan continued, bringing up a holographic display. "The Phantom's data on Xarn power systems has been fully analyzed. We're implementing countermeasures in all new vessels, and retrofit teams are working around the clock on the existing fleet." A flash of light drew Wright's attention to Bay 94, where the prototype of their newest vessel, the U.S. Mongoose, was undergoing its final systems check. At just under 800 meters in length, it was even smaller than their standard corvettes. But size had long since ceased to be a meaningful measure of combat effectiveness. "Show me the Mongoose's combat simulation results," Wright requested. The holographic display shifted, showing the new ship's performance metrics. Its revolutionary quantum core allowed for power generation that would have seemed impossible on a vessel of its size just months ago. The neural interface systems let a crew of just 15 operate systems that would have required hundreds on a conventional vessel. Admiral Henderson was right, Sullivan mused, studying the data. The future of space combat isn't about building bigger ships. It's about building smarter ones. A priority alert flashed across their displays. Wright's expression hardened as he read the message. The Xarn have started construction on something new. Long-range scouts report it's bigger than anything they've built before. Sullivan pulled up the reconnaissance data. 25 kilometers in length. They're calling it the Galaxy Crusher. Estimated construction time: 3 years. Wright actually smiled. 3 years? In 3 years, we'll have produced enough ships to field 10 new battle groups, each one capable of running circles around their monster. He turned to face the fabrication lines. "Send word to all facility commanders. I want production increased by 20%. If the Xarn want to double down on their failing strategy, we'll oblige them." The automated systems continued their precise dance, assembling vessels that represented the pinnacle of human innovation. Each ship carried an AI combat system that could process tactical data faster than any organic crew, while still remaining under human control for strategic decisions. "New efficiency report from Bay 62, Sullivan announced. "The quantum-guided assembly systems are exceeding expectations. We can have another squadron ready in 3 days instead of 4. Wright walked to the edge of the observation platform, watching as the U.S. Mongoose powered up its systems for the first time. Its hull seemed to shimmer slightly as the quantum stealth systems came online. "You know what the Xarn's biggest mistake was?" he asked rhetorically. "They thought size and power were the same thing. They never understood that efficiency, innovation, and adaptability are the true measures of military effectiveness." The Mongoose's engines flared to life, the new quantum drive system producing more power than a Xarn cruiser 10 times its size. Its neural interfaces connected seamlessly with its crew, turning ship and humans into a single, coordinated fighting unit. "Send word to Fleet Command," Wright ordered. "The first of the new generation is ready. Let's show the Ktarn what happens when you underestimate human ingenuity. Admiral Sarah Henderson stood aboard the bridge of the U.S. Triumph, Earth's gleaming blue sphere visible through the quantum-reinforced viewport. Behind her planet, 5,000 human ships waited in perfect formation, their new quantum drives humming in synchronized harmony. Ktarn fleet approaching from Vector 317. Commander Michael West reported from Tactical. Long-range sensors confirm 800 capital ships, including the World Breaker. They're deploying in attack formation Delta. Henderson's lips curved into a slight smile. Deploy Operation Hydra. All ships, execute predetermined battle plans. Remember your training. We're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting for the future of warfare itself. The human fleet split into autonomous battle groups, each consisting of 50 vessels working in perfect coordination. Their neural networks synchronized through quantum entanglement, allowing them to react as a single organism while maintaining individual tactical flexibility. Supreme Commander Vexthal is broadcasting. Lieutenant Jennifer Nash announced from communications, playing on main speakers. Humans. Vexthal's voice boomed across all frequencies. Your pathetic resistance ends today. We bring the might of 800 capital ships. Surrender now, or watch your homeworld burn. Henderson opened a channel to respond. This is Admiral Henderson of the United Earth Fleet. We've studied your tactics, analyzed your weaknesses, and prepared accordingly. One last chance to retreat. The Ktarn response came in the form of energy beams that could have vaporized continents, but the human fleet was already moving, their formations flowing like water around the massive attacks. Operation Hydra had begun. Battle Group Echo, execute attack pattern Serpent's Fang. Henderson commanded. Groups Alpha through Delta, maintain screening formation. Show them why we built our ships this way. The U.S. Mongoose, leading Battle Group Echo, demonstrated why it was the pride of the new fleet. Its quantum drive allowed it to practically teleport between firing positions, its advanced targeting systems striking with surgical precision at weak points in the Ktarn shields that older sensors would never have detected. Their formation is breaking, West reported with barely contained excitement. They can't maintain cohesion against multiple attack vectors. Our quantum-linked targeting is bypassing their adaptive shields completely. Inside the World Breaker, Vexthal watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled. The human ships moved with impossible coordination, each strike perfectly timed to exploit gaps in their defenses that shouldn't have existed. Battle Group Omega, execute killing stroke, Henderson ordered. All other groups, maintain suppressing fire. Don't let them regroup. 100 human ships accelerated simultaneously, their quantum drives pushing the boundaries of physics. They weaved through the gaps in the Ktarn formation, their synchronized weapon strikes bypassing shields that had been considered impenetrable. Direct hits confirmed on 30 Ktarn capital ships, West announced. Their command and control network is failing. They're losing coordination fleet-wide. Henderson watched as the mighty Ktarn armada began to fall apart. Their massive ships, designed to dominate through sheer size and power, had become nothing more than oversized targets for the agile human vessels. The World Breaker is trying to retreat, Nash reported. They're realizing too late why we built our fleet this way. All ships, execute final phase, Henderson commanded. Show them the true meaning of coordinated warfare. The human fleet moved as one, 5,000 ships acting with single-minded purpose. Their quantum-linked weapons struck simultaneously, overwhelming the remaining Ktarn vessels with attacks from every conceivable angle. Enemy fleet is in full retreat, West confirmed. Casualties minimal on our side. The new quantum shields performed beyond expectations. Henderson opened a channel to all ships. Well done, everyone. Today we prove that the future of warfare isn't about building bigger ships. It's about building smarter ones. About coordination, adaptation, and the courage to think differently. As the remains of the Ktarn fleet limped away from Earth, Henderson allowed herself a moment of reflection. The battle had proved what humanity had known all along. True strength lay not in the size of your ships, but in the ingenuity of your approach. Admiral Emily Anderson stood in the massive docking bay of the former Xarn flagship Worldbreaker, watching as human engineering teams swarmed over the captured vessel like industrious ants. The mighty ship, once the pride of the Xarn fleet, now served as a stark reminder of how thoroughly their military doctrine had failed. "Quite a different view from our first meeting here, isn't it?" she asked, turning to face the defeated Supreme Commander Vexthal. His once brilliant scales had dulled to a muted gray, matching his fallen status. "How?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How did you do it?" "Our ships were bigger, stronger, more powerful in every way." Anderson gestured to where the U.S. Mongoose was docked alongside several other human vessels. Their sleek forms seemed almost delicate next to the massive bulk of the Xarn ship, yet they had proven themselves far deadlier. "You built your fleet based on a fundamental misunderstanding of warfare," she explained. "You thought bigger meant better, that raw power could overcome any opposition. But warfare isn't about size. It's about adaptation, innovation, and coordination." Commander James Roberts approached, holding a data tablet. "Latest analysis of their technology confirms our initial findings, Admiral. Their entire military doctrine was built around overwhelming force. They never developed the kind of precision, targeting, or coordinated tactics we take for granted. Because they never needed to," Anderson mused, "until they met us." The peace conference was being held in the Worldbreaker's former command chamber, now repurposed as a neutral meeting ground. Representatives from both species gathered around a table that had been specially constructed to accommodate both human and Xarn ergonomics. "The terms are fair," Chief Negotiator Sarah Reynolds explained to the assembled Xarn leadership. "We're not interested in conquest or subjugation. What we want is understanding and cooperation." "You want our technology," one of the Xarn sub-commanders accused. Reynolds smiled. "Actually, we want to share ours. Your power generation systems, combined with our miniaturization technology, we could revolutionize civilian spacecraft design. Your structural engineering expertise, merged with our quantum mechanics. The possibilities are endless." In the ship's engineering section, Lieutenant Marcus Chen led a team studying the Xarn power core. "It's incredible," he reported to Anderson. "Their basic principles are sound, just overscaled. With our quantum enhancement techniques, we could make these systems 10 times more efficient at a fraction of the size." Anderson nodded, remembering her first view of the massive Xarn vessels. They built up because they never thought to build smart. Their entire civilization developed around the principle that bigger equals better. "And now?" Vexthal asked, having followed them into engineering. "Now," Anderson replied, "we show you a different way. The future isn't in building bigger ships. It's in building better ones. It's not about how much power you have, but how efficiently you use it." The engineering teams continued their work, human and Xarn technicians beginning to work side by side. Already, ideas were being exchanged, innovations proposed, new possibilities explored. "Your ships," Vexthal observed, watching the human corvette execute a precision docking maneuver, "they're not weak at all, are they?" Anderson smiled. "Strength comes in many forms, Commander. The strongest warrior isn't always the biggest one. Sometimes it's the one who knows how to use their advantages most effectively." As she looked out over the combined fleet, human and Xarn ships sharing space in the massive dock, Anderson reflected on how far they'd come. The war had been costly, but its lessons would reshape the future of both species. "Maybe that's the real victory here," she mused. "Not that we won the war, but that we all learned from it. The next generation of ships will combine the best of both our technologies. Xarn power with human precision, your durability with our adaptability." The future of warfare had indeed changed forever, but perhaps more importantly, so had the future of peace.